I started the worst Pokemon series about 2 years ago now, and eventually that turned to the spin-off best Pokemon series. I probably should have gotten to this particular Pokemon sooner, but ever since I started the best Pokemon series, one Pokemon that has been suggested far more than any other Pokemon that I've seen is Mega Rayquaza. Mega Rayquaza is so powerful in Smogon singles that it essentially broke the Ubers tier and was banned from Ubers, spawning a new format called Anything Goes, or AG for short, with the only real rule for Anything Goes being the infinite battle clause so battles don't last forever. This is pretty insane, since for a long time the Ubers tier acted like a ban list for OU, and now Mega Rayquaza broke that formula. This reason alone is why Mega Rayquaza is considered to be one of the greatest Pokemon in competitive battling history ever, and why in this episode we'll be discussing if Mega Rayquaza is the best Pokemon or not. Now, in case you guys are unfamiliar, in this series, we rate Pokemon on a scale 1 through 5 based on their offense, defense, versatility, move pool, and overall viability in a competitive battling setting. If a Pokemon excels in all of these categories, then it might just be the best Pokemon out there. Keep in mind that this series is focused on battling from a competitive standpoint only, which is very different than battling against gym leaders in the single player or against opponents with unoptimized teams who don't exactly know what they're doing. So taking a closer look at Mega Rayquaza is a dragon and flying type Pokemon with the unique ability Delta Stream. Delta Stream summons strong winds that remove the weaknesses of flying types, which Mega Rayquaza so happens to be, and it also acts as a unique form of weather. This is to balance out Groudon and Kyogre in terms of the story's lore with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but competitively, Delta Stream is still a pretty good ability. Mega Rayquaza has a stat line of 105 HP, 180 attack, 100 defense, 180 special attack, 100 special defense, and 115 speed. These stats are pretty insane in their own right, as every single one of Mega Rayquaza's base stat breaks at least that 100 point threshold, and its attack stats are some of the highest in the game. In terms of base stat total, Mega Rayquaza is tied with both Mewtwo forms for the highest base stat total of any Pokemon at a whopping 780. This could possibly be broken with Sword and Shield, but as it stands right now, this is the highest base stat total of any Pokemon. To put things into perspective, this is over 100 more base stat total points than Pokemon like Dragonite, Latios, and even the Necrozma forms. Mega Rayquaza has a lot going for it, but just like any other Pokemon that we cover in this series, we have to cover its negatives first before we discuss its positives. Now, as a disclaimer, when it comes to the best Pokemon series, I do have to be a little bit nitpicky with some negatives, as some of these Pokemon, it's very difficult to find some negatives. So for Mega Rayquaza's first negative, the Fairy weakness. Delta Stream is nice as it essentially replaces the negatives of being a flying type, however Mega Rayquaza still has that Fairy type weakness. Fairies are a crucial part of the Pokemon metagame, whether you're playing singles or VGC, and you will most likely see at least one Fairy type Pokemon on every team you face, which can cause some issues for your Mega Rayquaza, especially when you consider the fact of how popular all of the Tapus are. And I tried to think of more weaknesses, that's really the only weakness I can think of. You can say things like, oh, it's weak to Stealth Rocks on Switch Hit, and a lot of other smaller things like that that are pretty much obvious, but outside of the Fairy weakness, none of these other negatives you can really think of aren't really that important. And now for the positives, Mega Rayquaza can hold an item. This breaks all logic of Mega Pokemon, since you can have an item despite being able to Mega Evolve as Mega Rayquaza. Not being able to hold an item is a huge downside to all Mega Evolutions as a whole, and it was seen as sort of way to balance Mega Evolution a little bit, but Mega Rayquaza just defies that logic for whatever reason. This means that you can give Mega Rayquaza an item like the Life Orb or even a Choice Band to do even more damage. The only drawback to this is that, if you even want to consider this a drawback, in order to Mega Evolve Rayquaza into Mega Rayquaza, you must have the move Dragon Ascent on it, which is a base 120 power physical flying move, which you would probably use anyway in most situations, even if you weren't forced to, since it's just a good move. The stats. Now just look at these stats again. I don't think I need to explain this too much any further, but 780 base stat total is insane. These attack stats are insane, and there isn't one stat on Mega Rayquaza that I would consider bad. Its worst stats are its defense, which are still pretty decent at 100. The Delta Stream ability. Delta Stream is a pretty great ability for Mega Rayquaza, as it gets rid of the drawbacks of being a flying type while keeping all of the advantages. I'll admit it's really not the greatest ability, and there are some other more terrifying abilities out there, but this is a very fitting ability for Mega Rayquaza that only suits its strengths. Wide move pool. We'll talk more about this in the move pool portion of this video in the ratings, but Mega Rayquaza has access to some fantastic offensive moves that you can't take too lightly. Mega Rayquaza has a great deal of positives and very little negatives, if any, which just shows how great this Pokemon really is. Now moving on to Mega Rayquaza's ratings. In terms of offense, I will give Mega Rayquaza a 5 out of 5. Mega Rayquaza has an attack and a special attack out of 180, both of which are amongst some of the highest in the entire Pokemon universe. You combine this with the fact that it can hold a damage boosting item despite being a Mega Pokemon, and its good speed stat of 115, and you have an amazing offensive Pokemon that is pretty terrifying to go up against. For defense, I'll give Mega Rayquaza a 4 out of 5. Now, Mega Rayquaza is best tailored to be an offensive powerhouse, however, it is still a pretty good Pokemon from a defensive standpoint. 105 HP is great, and both defensive stats are 100, which is more than usable. If you pair this with Mega Rayquaza's Delta Stream ability, it is great from a defensive standpoint. The only real downside to Mega Rayquaza from the defensive end is this lack of reliable recovery, but outside of that, there really aren't too many reasons why this Pokemon will get a lower rating in terms of defense. For versatility, I'll give Mega Rayquaza a 5 out of 5. Mega Rayquaza has two great attack stats that are both more than usable and can be even used in a mixed setting, access to many items which you can benefit from despite being a Mega, which I keep saying, but it's kind of insane when you think about it, a Mega Pokemon holding an item that's not a Mega Stone, and a nice variety of different moves to use, especially on the offensive end. The versatility is more than there, with the only real issue being Mega Rayquaza is required to have the Dragon Scent move in order to Mega Evolve. This really isn't that much of a downside again, since it is a very powerful move you'd want to use in most situations anyway, but it still is somewhat of a drawback when it comes to Mega Rayquaza's versatility. I don't think it's enough to warrant anything lower than a 5 out of 5, since Mega Rayquaza can do a lot of things regardless, but it is something to keep in mind. For move pool, I'll give Mega Rayquaza a 5 out of 5. Mega Rayquaza just simply has a fantastic move pool, with access to some rather uncommon moves like Dragon Ascent, Extreme Speed, and Recreate, all of which are fantastic on the physically offensive end. On the special side, it has access to just about everything you would need in terms of coverage, like Surf, Fire Blast, Draco Meteor, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt. Mega Rayquaza has an insane offensive move pool, which is part of the reason why I think it's such a fantastic Pokemon, and maybe even the best Pokemon out there. And for viability, I'll give Mega Rayquaza a 5 out of 5. This should be pretty obvious. Mega Rayquaza is so great, and it's so viable in the Smogon singles metagame, that it even created its own format and got banned from Ubers. It doesn't really get much more viable than that, since Mega Rayquaza basically broke what viability meant. Mega Rayquaza is the embodiment of viability, and that's why it's easily one of the best Pokemon that's ever existed up until this point. For some Mega Rayquaza's movesets, first we have Smogon's recommended Generation 7 set, which is Rayquaza with the Flying EMZ, Max Attack, Max Speed, Adamant Nature, Dragon Dance, Dragon Ascent, Earthquake, and Extreme Speed. You could switch out the item for a Life Orb or even a Choice Band if you want to do other damage and swap Dragon Dance for another move, and outside of Dragon Ascent, you can realistically replace anything you want with whatever move you think would fit Mega Rayquaza and your team. Dragon Dance is a fantastic setup move as it makes your physical attack even more insane while boosting your speed to ensure you outspeed some other faster Pokemon, and in my opinion this speed boost is definitely more needed than the attack boost since your attack stat is already a whopping 180. Now for a double set or a VGC set if you want to call it that, even though Rayquaza is not currently legal in VGC, this is a VGC 2016 set, which is Rayquaza with the Life Orb again, Max Attack, Max Speed, Naive Nature because you're mixed now, Dragon Ascent, Extreme Speed, Draco Meteor, and of course Protect since VGC really likes their Protect. Now this is a similar moveset to the singles one, and although Mega Rayquaza isn't as much of a tyrant in VGC as it was in Smogon singles, it is still a huge threat that you need to be aware of. Now in the current VGC 2019 rule set, Rayquaza is not allowed to have Dragon Ascent, meaning it can't Mega Evolve and it's not as good as it possibly could be, which severely hurts it in VGC. Now in just a few weeks, we'll be entering a new VGC format where Mega Rayquaza is legal however, and I'm sure that Mega Rayquaza will rise in popularity and be much better than it is now. I do still think its counterparts Groudon and especially Kyogre have a little bit of an edge over Mega Rayquaza in VGC still however, but only time will tell if that is right. And that is Mega Rayquaza. Is Mega Rayquaza the best Pokemon? Let me know what you guys think about Mega Rayquaza in the comment section down below for a chance to be featured in the next best Pokemon video like this comment right here. Personally, I think Mega Rayquaza is currently the best Pokemon when it comes to a standard single Smogon setting, but as we've seen from VGCs in the past, it is amongst the best, but not quite nearly the best out there. Now, I also plan on having this series on a little bit of a hold until the release of Sword and Shield, which is another reason why I don't upload the best or worst Pokemon series videos as much as I did in the past, with very little, if any, best and worst Pokemon videos coming out until Sword and Shield. I feel like we've pretty much covered every Pokemon that needs to be covered, especially for the best Pokemon series, and until Sword and Shield come out, we don't really have much more to discuss. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, I will see you all next time, and bye bye.